How's going? Welcome aboard. It is I, TJ, Taurai Jack, and welcome to M5 Successful Friends, representing M5 Property Addicts, M5 Property Varsity. And hey, it is one of those days where I am hosting yet another friend of M5 Successful Friend, meaning that they are a successful friend. And I have known this guy here for, maybe about close to 4 years now. And he's the money guy. And in here, we're going to be talking about everything about him. And allow me to introduce you, none other than Christiaan. Christiaan, how's it going?
Great, thanks to you, Tarai. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast today.
Nice, man, nice. Christiaan, I started knowing you back in the days, and I call you the money guy because you are that guy that from time to time when I've always needed money, I come to you and you make it happen, which is your everyday life, right? And that's a profession for you, and that's the world that we've known each other. But we have had many other interactions outside of that. And I should say life has been good having you around. But who is Christiaan?
Yeah, well, me in a nutshell, I was born and raised in Pretoria and spent my whole life here. I'm not going to mention what high school I went to because I constantly get joked about it, where they say that's the first thing that people from that school say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been in Pretoria my whole life, studied accounting, didn't feel the calling, and I actually ended up quitting my studies in my third year with a little bit of family circumstances, parents going broke. Yeah. And I took a 3-month sabbatical where I went down to Hartenbos, went to go and live with one of my best friends from primary school. They moved there shortly after we matriculated, and worked as a bartender in the yacht club at Mossel Bay. What? Gave me a lot of peace and calm, yeah.
And, I didn't know that about you. You have been a bartender before.
Yeah, I started waitering when I was a matric for pocket money, and it also helped me overcome a lot of my insecurities because I was very shy. I mean, if you compare how comfortable it is to speak in front of a crowd now to how I was in school, I was one of the most introverted people you could find. So there was quite a lot to overcome. I mean, if I think back, the first ever table that I served as waiter, so I started off as a runner and then they promoted me to become a waiter and proper tips. And the first ever table that I served, I think I maybe said 5 sentences to them. They placed their orders, everything. I was just like, I don't know what to do here. And I ended up getting a tip. And I thought, but I didn't die.
What's
getting out of my shell out of that.
Yeah. What is the difference between a runner and a waiter?
Well, the runners do all the crap work. We were literally just clearing out tables, setting new tables, and relying on the waiters to tip us at the end of each night. So basically making their lives easier and getting paid in the process, but completely discretionary. So it was also a valuable lesson to me in terms of how to approach business and things for going forward. Take control.
So you speak of that industry. So that's where I started off as well. So my first job, no qualifications at all. You speaking of the runner, so that's the frontline office, right? So the back end office, which is the porter. So you got the porter, the guys in the kitchen. Back in those days, they used to call them a porter. So the guy who, when everyone else is finished eating and the plates go back in the kitchen, I was the guy who used to scrap all the plates. They were, well, in that place where I used to work in, they didn't have a washing machine. So I was the guy who used to wash the dishes. So I'd scrape off the plates, put them aside, and then I'll wash them. And the guys who are in the kitchen, they are screaming for more plates, and you are struggling. So humble beginnings, It teaches you nice things.
Yeah, no, I remember that part of it quite well. So my side stopped at scraping out the plates, but it was still with one of those massive taps that you have to rinse it off and then wash.
Yes. Nice. Okay, good.
And high pressure in a weird way.
Correct. Yeah. So Christiaan, you studied accounting, but
Yeah.
I know you as a property investor. I know you as you play heavily as well within the transactions of properties, which we are going to come back to a little bit. And I know that you're a happily married guy. I see you from time to time with your missus. But you're a little bit crazier than I am in other areas as well. I mean, the last time we were talking about this particular topic, and you're telling me that you want to do your next run of cycling between a couple of towns and from one end to the next. That's about 1,000 kilometers, isn't it?
Well, in 2017, we cycled from Pretoria to Cape Town. We were hoping to do it again this year, but unfortunately with the lockdown, that plan was put aside. So hopefully again next year. But yeah, no, that was quite an amazing journey, and it opened up my mind. It's just started simplifying everything around me.
So just walk me through that process, right? Because I mean, for us to be cycling, I mean, I asked you so many questions the day that we were talking about that, and I was like, and I'm sure you went home and like, I think TJ is the dumbest guy now. And I was asking, did you go? Are you traveling? How do you have backup? How does it work? You know, just walk us through that whole journey that you took in from Pretoria to Cape Town. How long did it take you from a preparation perspective? Yeah.
So from way back when at the start, it happened with, and also a friend of mine that you've also interacted with, Jock, two of us did the ride together. We went and watched the Banff Mountain Film Festival as we do every year, and at the end of the evening he told me he wants to get a mountain bike. So I said, yeah, 100%, let's find you a good deal. And with me knowing quite a couple of other cyclists and being an admin on one of the community groups here in Pretoria, I started reaching out to some of the shop owners and then got him a good deal. And in celebrating that bicycle, we had a couple of beers, and we were just talking about adventuring. Yeah. And both of us read an article by Kevin Davies, a journalist for Mail and Guardian, where he cycled the Sishen Saldanha line to get from Joburg to Cape Town. And we started talking about it, and the beers were flowing, and then eventually it just got to a point of, bugger this, let's cycle to Cape Town. And that was October 2016. Yeah. And he then said, well, let's do it. And I agreed. So we had to start planning, to start putting things together. And it just became more and more of a dream initially. Yeah. And by March the next year, after having also met with people who have done similar trips before, we decided, well, game on, let's do it. And quite haphazardly at that point, we started looking at fundraising, because a lot of people asked, what's your cause? And we said, because we can. So we ended up finding a daycare center in Soshanguve, for whom we raised close to 50,000 Rand. Yeah. But the whole process of preparation was literally just riding on the bike, spending time on it, getting the legs fit. So both of us just pushed to get ourselves comfortable with cycling 100 kilometers, at least 2 days in succession. And that was the extent of the preparation. And quite frankly, I don't think you can properly prepare yourself, especially if you have no idea what you're letting yourself in for. And then on the 21st of May, 2017, we set off from Soshanguve. And I still remember that morning how my heart was just racing, just thinking, what on earth are you doing to yourself, you chop? Where are you going? And we rode the first day. That was 112 km to Magaliesburg. Legs were slightly fatigued, and we had a couple of beers that evening, debriefed. We have a Facebook page that has all the videos of everything we did, called The Fellowship of the Wheel. So we're both avid fantasy readers. I mean, we're talking about The Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. So the connection was made to the Fellowship of the Wheel. Yeah. And the next morning, quite uncomfortable, got on the bike, rinsed and repeated. And in the end, we cycled over a course of 15 days. We got to Cape Town. So it was so unreal. I mean, what I'll never forget is the middle part where there's nothing around, especially through the Karoo. It's flat. and started hitting some mountain passes when we got onto Route 62 from Oudtshoorn side. And that changed the intensity a little bit, but the legs were already fit. I mean, I lost quite a lot of weight in the course of that trip.
Yeah.
But what I'll never forget is the last morning I left from Valdevie just outside Paarl, and just before Klapmuts was the first time that I could see Table Mountain. And I still remember just popping a short video onto the Facebook group saying, I can see Table Mountain, this is actually happening now, but still fairly blasé about it. And then when I got to Bloebeek side and got onto Beach Road, and I saw, I'm less than 20 k's away, and I could see the mountain that big in front of me, I just started bawling. And I cried like I've never cried before in my life. I mean, even just recalling it now, I start feeling that emotion pop back up again. And to have finished there and to have got into the V&A waterfront was absolutely breathtaking.
Wow, wow. For me, it's always amazing for people that take the leap of faith and decide on doing something that they've never done before. And they prepare themselves and dive in. That's what you did. And well done on that, you know. If you had to take a look at that journey, Christiaan, versus what you discovered along the way about yourself, about our beloved South Africa, the scenery, and all of those things that you saw. I'm sure we can literally like write a book about everything else that happened within there. What, 15 days of self.
Yeah.
But obviously you were riding with a friend. If we're to look at all of that, what is the one thing that you can say, hey, I'm going to do it again for this particular reason?
The most important reason to do it again, and that's why I would urge and invite anybody to take up whichever challenge it is, even if it's if you're a walker or a runner and your limit is doing a 5K, try and challenge yourself to for a whole week do consecutive 10-kilometer runs. Your body will not love it initially, but your mind starts protecting you. And we got to a point where we had absolutely no control over our thoughts. Every single morning as we set off, both of us just said, I wonder what I'm going to think about today. And your mind just goes, because it's sheer simplicity. We had no backup vehicle. It was just the two of us on bicycles and all of our luggage, everything with us on the bikes. So you've got everything you need, and it is so little. And out of that, it just completely changed my mindset. I became even more of a minimalist and even more prone to decluttering at home. And I just started focusing on how to simplify everything in my life. And it got to a point of, if I've not touched anything in the house within the space of 6 months, I want to get rid of it. I want less stuff around me, and I just want to be, to live, to experience. So I've decluttered a lot of things around the house, but over and above that also I've decluttered a lot of things out of my mind, because I just started focusing more and more on what I can simplify. And it's actually quite interesting, because one of my absolute favorite books about that is a book called Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. It was written by Greg McKeown.
Right.
And I read that book before the trip, but a lot of that started kicking in and really resonating during that time, where I just started eliminating noise out of my life. And that is one of the main things that I'm yearning for. And that's why I'm so sad about the fact that I was unable to do the ride this year. But just looking at the whole picture of it, I'm yearning for that 6 hours quiet time a day where you're just lost in your own thoughts, because your mind starts wandering and you've got such strange memories popping up. I mean, I was walking through my grandparents' house in my mind's eye, seeing detail with literally where they had what type of ornaments, I was comparing my father and my stepfather's parenting techniques. It's never been a hang-up, but just finding time to really sit and process and understand their motivation in terms of word choice, in terms of discipline, in terms of approach. And we don't give ourselves enough time to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, because we are busy chasing either the job or we're busy chasing some money somewhere. But I mean, well done on that. I almost want to bring it to our usual topic, which is property. You are a property investor. You're also a coach, and from time to time, your profession is getting involved in transactions. But for you to get like 15 days solid and just go and do weird stuff like this, it's weird to me because I haven't just come around to do like a bicycle ride for 2 kilometers. You know what I mean? And I know you've sent so many invitations like, TJ, let's do this. There's a bike. I'm like, I want to do it one day. One day when I grow up, I'll do it. But the question here, Christiaan, is how actually do you find this time? 15 days, and you leave all of your work and you just go and do it. For some of us, we like, these 15 days, we need to be working. But what I've realized for me is that my property at that time, they're working for me. So now I can start doing weird stuff that you're doing. But I mean, for you, how does that work?
It's exactly that. I mean, if you look at a comfortable property portfolio, you've got your tenant management in place and all of that is working there, then you don't have to put as much time into maintaining your portfolio. So one is able to time it around it and look at what you really want. And that's one of the key things for me. And especially after that trip, I just became more and more strict on boundaries. So I will very seldomly take a phone call after 5. I will very seldomly start engaging before 8 o'clock in the mornings as well. I've got that limit. So I'll maybe sit and run through emails during the night as I'm awake or bored or whatever for that matter. But I will time the delivery time on that email to only deliver the next morning at 8 o'clock. And I just started setting those boundaries for myself first and foremost. But over and above that, from a management point of view, you at some point have to start handing it over to other people, even though certain things won't work exactly like you would do it yourself. Right. There's that balance. I mean, we all want to have absolute control, but it can kill you because you start losing track with everything around you.
You speak, you indicate to us that, you've now built this property portfolio that you've got, and maybe later on you can share in terms of numbers, how much you've got now, how much you've built and how long you've been at it. But I almost want to come back to the start, to say, how did you actually start in property? Because for many of us, I'll speak for myself, it wasn't even in my peripheral, but I had a grandfather, one of my cousins' grandfather. He actually owned a precinct of sort. But because my grandfather, we never used to speak about this, it was foreign for me. And when I started working, yes, I knew that I wanted to buy properties, but I only knew ways to do it, which was via the bank or to buy cash. I just didn't know much. Until I got educated, and then I realized, there's actually a little bit more that you can do. And that was my awareness. And for you, Christiaan, how did you start?
Yeah, it's also quite a lot of stumbling initially, and I still find it so ironic. I mean, my stepfather owned a perm branch. He was an estate agent in Pretoria for years, and moved into commercial broking. And I still recall, like, with one of the sales that he did, it was a liquor store in Hammanskraal, 3 shops. And I had to go through the one night to go and help with stock take. And I never asked questions around it, which was quite odd because I grew up in a household where you do not discuss finances. And me, especially as a child, I'm not allowed to even know what's going on in their finances. That to me is a valuable lesson for the future. My kids, one day when I'm hopefully blessed to have kids, will definitely be more involved because it causes quite a disadvantage long term.
Yeah.
But I, from returning from my sabbatical, I started looking for work and then realized how sheltered I was brought up because I really struggled to find a job. And the only decision that I made for myself was I'm not going to go into accounting. I made the decision I'm not going to pursue that as a career.
Right.
And subsequently, I was placed at ABSA Home Loans in the processing department. And then from there started dealing with home finance transactions, seeing the other side of it. I'm quite skilled when it comes to mathematics. My acuity is quite strong there, so I could very easily assess transactions, work through all of that. But also got into a point of things started just falling into a rut. I didn't do much. And you see all these people purchasing properties, a lot of transactions being run, because at that stage, 2005 to 2007, ABSA had a huge market share just before the acquisition of Barclays, or by Barclays rather. And I started recognizing some of the names coming over my table. It was actually quite cool. I ended up meeting one of these guys about 2 years later, where I looked at his portfolio and he was earning about 100,000 Rand a month, but buying flats in Sunnyside for between 60 and 80,000 Rand. And initially I thought, okay, he's maybe speculating because I started seeing his file and his name coming over my desk like once to twice a month. And then eventually I started drawing inquiries further, just having a look at what he's doing. And I realized that every single property was bought and kept. All of those bonded with ABSA. It totaled 67 properties that he bought in the space of 2 years. And that was before the National Credit Act, so granted, a little bit easier. And I started asking questions about it. So I went to the head of credit and we had a long chat about it. And that's where I realized, especially when you look at your core banking environment, it's if they qualify, give them the finance. That's that. Sure. Don't ask further questions. And luckily for me, I've always been quite inquisitive. So I started digging around. I wanted to find out what was going on. Wasn't allowed to phone the guy because that was my first thought. I'm just going to phone this. But we weren't allowed, so couldn't do that. And then a friend of mine invited me along to an info session from the group TRIOC. Right. And they started gaining more prominence at that point in time as a property investment group, selling one-day workshops. And during the information evening, one of the Investor Club owners was struggling with a banking problem. And I chatted to him and then I said, well, let me have a look if I can sort it out for you. And the next morning I phoned him just after 8, said that his money will be available in his account by 10. 10:05, I got a phone call from TRIOC Finance for a job interview. So that was quite an interesting shift. And I was quite cautious and wary about the security that the bank can bring. But I went for the interview and I took the job. And funnily enough, they actually just matched my salary of what ABSA was paying me at that stage, but I could see greater potential because these guys were looking forward. They wanted to do things. And started working with property investors. So I started getting more insight into what their strategies entail, how they approach property transactions. And that was completely foreign to me at that stage because I was just transactionally driven. And then from there, I eventually got to a point where I started feeling, okay, I need to start buying properties. I can see so many people around me buy. Why am I not buying? And I started assessing deals, looking at it, but I was petrified of making a mistake. And it actually led to a point of me looking at 4, 5, 6 deals, not a single one coming through because I took too long. And it was just analysis paralysis. And a good friend of mine that I've known since university eventually came through to me, and she sent me an offer to purchase for my first flat that I bought. So a property in Grand Central Apartments in Midrand. And she just said, we need to act on this quite quickly. You have a couple of hours. And I said, no, but wait. That's way too quick. I can't just make a decision outright. And
Yeah.
she asked me, "You trust me?" I said, "Yes." So she said, "Okay, well then sign the offer to purchase." I
Wow.
said, "I don't know. I'm still a bit scared."
Yeah.
And eventually she threatened me, saying she's going to come to my house with a baseball bat. I need to sign the effing thing with her words. I was like, okay. And it was literally just a case of, okay, fine, let's go for it. And that's how I bought my first property. And
Wow, don't we all need to have like friends like these ones?
yeah, I'm forever grateful. It was such a strange thought because even at that point, then having facilitated so many bond transactions, now submitting my own application for finance, I was scared. It's like, okay, are they going to say yes? Yes, no, maybe. And Nedbank still gave me that bond. Coincidentally, one of my least favorite banks at this point in time in terms of how their financing works.
Yeah.
But the bond's still running at prime minus 1.75, and I still got that on a 30-year bond. So the property broke even within 7 months. So wonderful deal. And then I just started feeling, okay, now listen, I need more. I want more.
But
And
you know what,
that's how I
Christiaan,
started.
you touch on something that that we hardly speak about, and that two things actually. I call it circumcising the mosquito. You know, and the over paralysis, analyzing it. That's the first one, and then the second one for me is you are immersed in the deals, but you're not doing a deal for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that I see a lot of people doing. That I've even had conversations with senior people at the bank and asked the question, you are head of home loans. What do you have? And they're like, I'm trying to build, right? Or you're head of credit. And they're telling you, I've never thought of it this way. I'm trying to build. And they're earning 100,000 or whatever the amount is. They qualify for good money. They actually know all the systems to get them to build the portfolio that they want. But like I had a conversation with the head of compliance the other day. The person who puts the rules for the credits to be happening. And they've got zero assets into their name.
Yeah.
And yet they are putting in the rules all the time in the banking systems for people like me and you to work around to find the good deals. That is, yeah. What was one of your stumbling blocks over and above, you know, their paralysis here? Because this is fear for me is what I hear is what was one of your stumbling blocks in just getting by. Is there something else that you want to throw in there?
No, the biggest element to it was fear. It was just so many unknowns, especially at that point. I hadn't really interacted with tenant management. So all of the red lights, and I mean, especially if you start listening to so many of the economists who are anti-property, just seeing, but what if a tenant defaults? What if this? What if that? What if? And that helped me back to quite a great extent. And but I started getting myself educated. I started spending time with rental agents. I started understanding the process and the systems, and that led to me be serving on the committee of a large property investment group. They're running most of my properties rentals still, and out of that, I just started asking more and more questions, and it gave me the confidence to know that, listen, things can go wrong. Inevitably, things will go wrong. I believe we're all destined to at least have one tenant from hell. It has to happen. If it doesn't happen, then you're not playing big enough. And even worse, if you are playing small and it happens, it can sink you. It can really hurt. 100%. So, and that to me was a massive mind shift, getting to that point of rather buying more properties, getting to a larger portfolio to be able to weather the storm if something happens.
You started off back, it's what, almost 10, 15 years ago?
I bought my first property in 2008.
Right. And at this stage, how big of a portfolio are you now? And with that, I just want to solidify your thinking of it's better to have more properties versus having a few, you know? So maybe walk us through that thinking there.
Yeah, so in terms of the thinking, if you've got one property and it's standing vacant, you're standing with 100% vacancy. As opposed to one property out of 20, you'll have a 5% vacancy.
Right.
Similarly, so if you spread your risk, instead of buying 1 million rand property, rather buying 2 500,000 rand properties, you start watering down your effective risk, because the chances of everything standing vacant at once is almost zero. So that's the one side of it. I've had to dispose of a couple of properties, had a bit of a bad business relationship back in 2010. It nearly sunk me, but luckily I had some properties that could help and salvage my position.
Sure.
So I'm back up to 7 properties now, but currently assessing another 4 deals, hoping to at least buy another one within the next month.
Right. Now, having said that, what do you primarily focus on when you are investing? When Christiaan is saying, "Hey, I want this, I'm happy with," what is it that you focus on?
Yeah, so at least cash flow neutral. Okay. That was also a massive.
What do you mean by cash flow neutral?
So let's say I get 100% bond, my rental income has to cover all of the expenses, including the bond installment. So in effect, my capital layout for that property should just be my acquisition costs. Because initially I was just buying off-plan new developments, cost included, and I was happy with carrying a shortfall. All of my initial properties were like that, and it was part of the mindset. And it was actually so funny listening to another talk of a large developer a couple of nights ago, where they are still repeating that same sales pitch that got me a good 13 years ago as I started at Triop. So all of our sales were new development. And it's not the best way to approach it. Yes, you've got space for some of those. With a lot of new developments, you've got great future prospects in terms of capital growth and so forth, but you have to prepare yourself for a cash flow burden on each and every one of them. So at this point in time, my whole focus comes down to what are the mechanics of the deal. I don't want to play in the property market of above 1.2 to 1.3 million rand, especially when you start looking at safeguarding yourself with having more than one exit strategy. You want to be able to sell, and for that property has to be in a market that is still appealing to even normal purchasers, not just investors.
Yeah.
And the other side of that would come down to just making sure that the deal itself has the requisite merits. If it's a house, can I maximize the value? Can I improve on it with a low capital layout and increase my income? So that's typically what I'm focusing on now, and also looking at a couple of distressed properties to speculate with, buy, fix, and resell.
Okay, cool. Whilst you're at that, Christiaan, you're speaking of another strategy, so to speak, and you know there's different ways of doing it. So for instance, for me, I'm in my happy space. You speak of the cash flow neutral, and I'm of the view that that's a personal view, and that's why I asked you. I'm more on the cash flow positive, because for me it's actually a business. So I want it to be a business, and I want to generate money out of that business, right? And you saying that your safer place is a cash flow neutral, and you're kind of like working on the long run in terms of capital growth and things like that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes and no. So the absolute worst case for me is cash flow neutral. I'd like to have that property have a positive cash flow, but I'll base my figures on it being cash flow neutral. So anything above that would be a bonus to gradually build into it. And that's also specifically where the buy, fix, and flip opportunities come in to subsidize and add more capital into it to grow the property portfolio.
Right. Christiaan, you are involved a lot. Your profession, your day-to-day profession, other than being a property investor, is you facilitate transactions for people. Well, just walk us through that. What is it that you do?
So my day job is a bond originator, where I facilitate bond applications on behalf of property purchasers to all of the different banks. So in short, we start off with a pre-qualification. We have a look at what funding you have access to, and then I'll assist and also coach you into tailoring your property transactions accordingly for the best possible outcome.
Right. But Christiaan, you don't work with anyone. You specifically work with investors. You know, that's what I've kind of like, that's what I've kind of like seen, because you are predominantly working with investors. And for me, the reason why I like to work with you is because you've got so many products behind you that we can kind of like handpick from, right?
Yeah.
But I've also seen that you're not the traditional bond originator where you say, we're going to throw it in, let's pray God will come through. You kind of like treat a transaction on its own merit, the individual versus the deal itself versus the product that you're going to. When I started working with you, I'd get frustrated quite a bit, because you'd say, I would ask you, dude, can we not send the application at bank X? And you come back to me and you say, no, TJ, we mustn't go to bank X because they don't have the right product. And I would get frustrated in the beginning because I didn't understand how the process was working. And yet in the background, you know the bank's products. So you'd look at me and my partners, right, in terms of qualification, in terms of everything else that we've got at hand, versus the property that we're buying, and you'd say, which is the best fit product for us to go and apply in, which gives us 100% success rather than just sending through an application to everywhere.
Yeah. No, it just makes it a lot easier because first and foremost, from a transaction point of view, originators get paid on successful registration of a bond. And
right.
I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to that approach. I don't want to flog a dead horse. There's a lot of preparation that one can do upfront to get a higher success rate. And that's why I always push people for pre-qualification upfront, so that we look and see and establish what we have to work with, because there might be a niggle in terms of your credit bureau history or anything for that matter.
Yeah.
And if we can act proactively, it makes it a lot easier. And then
nice.
I just prefer working with investors over the normal residential market due to the fact that it aligns with my vision. And your traditional origination model has originators working with agents, trying to find deals, salvaging relationships with them. And from my positioning, it doesn't matter which agent you purchase through. I'm relevant because I'm helping you with your whole preparation of your transaction. So I find it more rewarding.
I should say that working with you, or a person like you, for me it's easier because what I've realized is that I send my company's details to you once, and you have a full view of who we are. And at any time when there's a deal on the table, you are bond ready. I think that's the term that you use. You call it, TJ, wait, let's make you bond ready. And at that particular time, we just need to send you the deal, which means that in terms of return on our time, you're like fast on acting, you know? Yeah. So yeah, that's one of, some of the benefits that I've seen working with you, Christiaan. But are there any tips, Christiaan, that you can just throw out to us for anyone that would like to start in property, or maybe they have 4 or 5 properties and they want to jump onto the next step into doing the big stuff? What kind of tips would you give them? Because you play in both sides of the world here. Eh? You play in the finding the money, you play in the investor yourself, and you are also, because you're in the transaction space, you see a lot of people that do things differently. What kind of tips would you throw out to us there?
So first and foremost, ensure that you are bond ready. So start off with that. And in a lot of instances, that would involve a complete review of your property portfolio to see which properties are underperforming, which ones you cannot afford to let go of, and then also the entire picture around it. So you may find yourself fully exposed from a bond point of view in your personal name, and it may mean that you would have to transfer one or two properties from your personal name to an entity to open up affordability. But start with the preparations to establish what type of bond you can expect, so that you are ready when you have to pull the trigger. But similarly, so if you qualify for R1 million and you're playing in the 1.5 million market, you will fall stuck because you will have to put down a deposit to make up for the balance purchase price.
Right.
So that's the first big tip. And then secondly, don't be afraid of partnering with people. Involve people that can take you to that next level if you yourself are finding yourself stuck. And I mean, TJ, that's where you are one of the best examples of it. If I look at the partnerships that you deal with, the people that you bring together, it makes such a big difference because you are able to capitalize on every single person's strong points. And it may be that somebody has a lot of cash and no time, or somebody has deals. It's just about finding the right synergies.
Right. You're very right. It's connecting the dots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christiaan, I'm going to come to the last section of our podcast. And this is where we kind of like just ask you a random question. And in a split of a second, you need to answer. And I cannot ask you of the first question because we already know that you're a cyclist and you're not allowed to answer that question with that answer. What do you do for fun?
Oh, obviously cycling. But apart from that, I love socializing with my friends, and it's always good fun to just philosophize over a bottle of red wine, have a long chat, in-depth discussions. I'm not fond of small talk at all. And apart from that, anything outside in nature. So I'm quite fond of rock climbing as well. Nice way to also get out and rely on your own strength and your own focus. Because interestingly enough, with rock climbing, a lot of men tire much faster than women do because we try to power through everything. If you start acting more calculated, relying on your leg strength and core and so forth, you're able to navigate up a rock face where I found myself literally getting lost on a rock face where you're hanging on and you're like, I don't know where to go. And then it's something stupid like your 1 foot just needs to be this much higher than you can reach the next hole.
Wow.
So that's a lot of fun for me.
Any favorite books, business books that you've got?
So in terms of, well, it's business and life. First and foremost, I'd suggest Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less.
All right.
And all of us, the first mind shift came from the Robert Kiyosaki books. So Rich Dad Poor Dad and the Cash Flow Quadrant are must reads. And then on the more philosophical side, and just in terms of own awareness, and now I can't remember the author's name. I think it's Maxwell Maltz, but the book is called Psycho-Cybernetics. It was written in the 1950s. He was a plastic surgeon who started paying attention to how people's personalities and worldviews changed when he did reconstructive or constructive surgery. And the premise of that also saying that your worldview is directly influenced by how you see yourself. And that's where one of my favorite sayings comes out of, and that is, life's a mirror. What you project, you get back.
Come on. Yeah, you spot on there. The last one is that, what does success look like to you, Christiaan?
Success to me is freedom. Freedom of choice, freedom of movement. If you do not have to worry about a paycheck, you are successful. Your reliance on the paycheck can be there. By all means, all of us will almost always still have that. But if you're in a position where it won't matter that much if it falls away, then you're successful. And that's on varying levels. I mean, whether you earn 10 grand a month or 150,000 rand a month, it's all up to how you see it yourself. And that's where one of my biggest points of advice always is focus on building assets, don't get liabilities, and get yourself to a point where you don't have contractual obligations tying you down and infringing on your freedom.
Don't work for money, work for assets. Boom.
Exactly.
Yeah, you heard it right, ladies and gentlemen. It's been great. I've told you before, we only bring successful friends, and this was Christiaan Jansen. And you have heard it. I like Christiaan for the fact that you're strong in the head, buddy. And not just you're strong in the head, you're also strong in physical. So you like to keep your head straight. You like to keep your physiques straight. And those are some of the things that I've taken off your page. I'll get there in some of the weird things that you do. Cycling.
We're going to keep on asking.
But it's been great having you around, Christiaan. Thanks a lot for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it from me. And until we meet again, boom, you had it right. And whatever comments that you want to throw in, do send those comments. If it is around what Christiaan does, if it is around cycling, I am not going to answer. Christiaan will, hopefully. But over and out for me, it's been great having you, Christiaan. And let's see you again on the next podcast. God bless and goodbye.
Thanks, all right. Appreciate it.
All right, man.